Believe it or not, Cities Skylines 2 is almost 1 year old. And with today's patch update and accompanying developer diary, it marks the latest patch after 2 months without. Colossal Order are now back from their what I'm sure was a much needed summer break with the new game update. And in this video, we're going to cover it all off. The big changes, the big fixes, what was said, and also crucially, I believe, what wasn't. So sit back and relax, and with time cards down below, let's jump into the video. Kicking off the patch and accompanying developers' diary, they say, whoa, hold on a minute. This is actually not the Detailers patch number 2 that we promised you, because it's not going to be as big as the last one. Their argument behind this is that they wanted to get out the quote-unquote homeless fix as soon as possible, and the decoration stuff was already good to go. So they bundled them together and pushed it out as the latest patch update for Cities Skylines 2. So how does all of this stuff work? How does it affect the game? Well, crucially, there is a new landscaping menu to go alongside those sweet changes. Not only can you make the ground look like concrete, but now you can place down some props, from stones in nature through to benches and fountains and crates and all sorts. There are 8 new categories inside of the new landscaping menu. Colossal Order go on to talk a little bit about why they included some things and excluded others here, and long story short, situational props, as I would call them, have been left out. So chimneys that obviously require a building underneath them, likewise air conditioning units, those ones we won't be able to place. However, they make note that there's roughly 298 to be precise, new decorations that we can now place alongside some of the other landscaping and customization changes that they've made to Cities 2. And I think on balance, this part is a good improvement. Though I will have a little bit more to say about improvements and perhaps some weaker spots slightly later in the video. I'd also like to bring your attention to this red car. We'll return to its journey of absolute madness to 10 Wood Street a couple of times throughout the video in the background there. Anywho, let's move on to the next part of the conversation, a little bit more about decorations. Specifically, how do they work? Well, good news, this answer's pretty quick. They work basically just like placing down trees or buildings inside of the game. They have a little collision area around them. They can be placed on surfaces, blah, blah, blah. The crucial thing here is that when you place them down, the props are free. No cost to place them, and obviously no further maintenance cost either. So all of those fountains and benches go crazy because they are entirely free inside of this new Cities 2 economy. The economy patch and subsequent ones were largely responsible for the emergence of this massive homelessness problem. They initially told us it would go away, it's just a wave, it'll calm down, but maybe it didn't? I don't know. Either way, there is an update on it now. It is supposed to be fixed during this patch. Some of the specifics here are super interesting. How does homelessness work in Cities 2? When citizens lose their home, either because they can't afford it or it was destroyed, they become homeless, of course. If they can afford to, they'll leave the city. If they can't, they'll set up shack, temporary shelter in your parks or abandoned buildings. And this, they say, is where the homeless tended to get stuck, unable to find new homes or leave the city. So, the decoration patch has a series of fixes to try and get around this, and they also provide a little tidbit, a little tip for us to try and fix it ourselves too. Delving into the specifics, the old version of the game had a random check to whether homeless households would look for a new, suitable home in the city or not. In the new version, homeless will always try to find a suitable home inside of the city. But that itself is not enough. It requires actual homes for them to move into, and that those homes aren't immediately filled by newly created households. To get around this, homeless demand has been changed, or how homelessness affects demand has been changed in 2 ways. Firstly, it causes fewer new households to spawn. Makes sense, free up the homes for the homeless. Also, though, it increases the demand for high-density residential buildings. So as people become homeless in this new version of Cities 2, for whatever reason, maybe because they're driving around endlessly making strange turns as you're about to see, they'll seek out high-density residential buildings instead. Interesting. Okay, not the only change though. For you see, depending on how many homeless households the city has, a bit of an oxymoron, but you get the idea, it may take a while before all of them get back on their feet, find their way into the city. What they're saying here is, the patch works, but it might take a little bit, so give the game a bit of time to run. You can, however, help the process along by fulfilling the demand for residential zoning, i.e. build more homes, you moron, and then there'll be some. Or, alternatively, you can provide public transport out of the city, such as intercity buses or trains. Just connect one up to the very edge of the boundary, send a train line out that way, or what have you, and you can just ship the homeless out. So, multiple solutions. The patch itself should fix it, and of course you can take action yourself by building buildings or shipping them out. Let's turn now to the final part. This part, I believe, is woefully underwritten. There was so much more that could have and maybe should have been said. It's about next steps. The end of this development diary basically ends with a very short paragraph. They say, "We hope this has given you some idea for what to expect for the next patch, and we will of course release the patch notes along with it when it goes live." By the way, if you're watching this video, the patch is probably live, unless you're watching in about the first maybe 10 to 12 hours. They didn't include anywhere in this section or anywhere in the written update when the patch would be released. However, if like me, you follow them on Twitter X, you will know that the update is scheduled for release a day after the developer diary came out. So long story short, the patch is probably out already, if not very soon. They go on to say, "We're excited to see what you create using the decorations. Don't hesitate to post screenshots on social media if you do so, showing off your creations." And that is it. And that's it for today's developer diary. However, as I alluded to already, I believe there's a lot more that maybe could have or should have been said. You see, this update follows on from a couple of, credit where credit is due, very good updates for Cities 2. It's also nearly City Skyline 2's 1-year anniversary. It came out in October of 2023, and at the time of recording this video, it is September 2024. And if this version of the game had released way back then, almost a year ago, honestly, it would be alright. You'd have to, of course, clarify that modding is very much in beta. There's still more to be done. Would it still need an early access label? Maybe, but regardless of that, the version that we have right now is pretty good. And with this patch update, fixing the homelessness problem that they introduced and was sort of always there in the background, maybe this is the best version of Cities yet. We're still waiting for mods to come online though, and speaking of still waiting, there was a little bit of a Q&A almost on Twitter. I thought you might find these interesting. What about the console version? They say they're continuing to work on it, each patch helps us improve, aka no date to announce. Anything on performance? We strive to do that in every patch. And finally, what about traffic? They're aware of a bug, not a priority for this patch. Not priority, just like the driver of this car, whose priority was nobody else's efficiency, including the cop behind him. He just really wanted to make some random turn. I don't know. Clearly, there's still work to be done for Cities 2 as it approaches its 1-year anniversary. Another good patch, likely under the hood, but in my opinion, still plenty of work left to be done. Thank you for joining me today. I'll see you next time.